Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Strategy Game Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Shippey. And today I wanted to continue our series on Seen, Known, and Heard. And this is the book that we're working on. Make sure you check out the show notes to subscribe for updates, previews of it, when it's coming out, all of that good stuff. But we're going to talk about just this process of what I call the undoing. And when I was writing this part of the book, it really came to mind that we've been in a place where we've experienced a lot of undoing over the last 5-7 years, whether it's related to belief systems, assumptions that we may have made about things, judgments, or opinions. And in the course of history, we know that there have been cycles of this over and over again. And there are seasons where certain trends, themes, and cycles come into play. And I think recognizing those can help us figure out what's going on, recognize it. And I think it can help us with how we choose to react to things. And so as we think about this undoing, I want you to think about what that word means to you right now, what it's meant to you over the last 5 to 7 years. How have you experienced an undoing of some sort? Whether that be in certain relationships, maybe you see realignments happening, pulling back from some that may have dissolved, and leaning into others. What about just belief systems, things maybe that you thought were absolutely true about certain things, and you started to question them, really think about them, be a little bit unsure, maybe some judgments or opinions that you previously held that you've gone through maybe a process, and maybe you haven't even recognized that you have gone through a process of subconsciously questioning them. And I think the practice of questioning is always a healthy thing. And when hard things start to happen, or things that we are not comfortable with, or things that times when we're recognizing that we may be moving into a season that's different from the previous season, we just start to ask questions. We question all the things around us. And sometimes we can enter into sort of a trauma mode, or when we get squeezed, right? Or when we go through these hard times, all of the random thoughts that have been already floating around in our minds gather, and they come to the surface. And when we get squeezed, sometimes we don't like what comes out. Can you ever think of a hard time or an example of a relationship that was really challenging to you, or a circumstance that was triggering to you, and you were already going through just a lot of pressure? So you're literally just, you feel like you are in a container, and the pressure keeps building and building and building, and all of a sudden the top comes off, and all the air, all the things just come out. And what comes out when we're squeezed? And sometimes we don't like it, sometimes it's ugly, but there's also an opportunity and a gift in the undoing, in the squeezing, and in us realizing that this can be an opportunity for refinement and growth. And I know for me personally, it's been a great opportunity for refinement and growth. Not always easy. And I don't know if necessarily it's meant to be easy, but I know that through the process, we can walk with ourselves, and also seek to see, know, and hear ourselves while we're going through it. And so when we have these hard things happen to us, or we see hard things happen around us, it's a wake-up call. You know, it's a reality check. It challenges us to think about why we're here, what really matters, who we are, and maybe what we might want to change. And so I think we've been through a lot of that in the past few years as a society, and will continue to be. And you know, I don't think it's certainly not the first time that maybe cycles have happened where it's a squeezing, or this period of kind of this overarching feeling or sensing of, you know, this is difficult territory and we're being challenged in different ways, right? And it won't be the last. So really the point here is that not only do we have all this noise happening around us in the world, but then we have it in our local community and our friend circles and trying to manage our lives. And then we have the internal noise that bubbles up in our minds, right? And I think it's something that we don't always give enough credit to, because it does impact us more than we recognize. And so when we try to ignore it, it doesn't go away. So what's your internal noise? What undoing has happened in your life in the past 5, 7, 10 years, or even just the last year? What are some of the questions that have been bubbling up to the surface in your mind? And I'd encourage you to write them down. And really, Michael Hyatt says, when we write, we get clear. And I think that's really true. Even going through the practice of just writing them down, jotting them out, sticking them somewhere to think about, makes them become more tangible. And it also enables you to practice some critical thinking around what's happening in your mind. What is the process that you're going through and have been going through? And so really stating them out loud or writing them down is always super helpful. So I hope that this episode was helpful for you to put just some words really into what's been happening in our society in the last 5 to 7 years. And whether you are a business owner, entrepreneur, or just listening into this for your own personal growth, this relates to all of those things. Because if you're a leader in a business, a nonprofit, you have people that work for you and the culture that you are responsible for, that you manage, or just that you are a part of. And so you can be a voice to recognize your own process of just undoing and shifting and shaping, and how you're growing as a person and how that's going to impact the culture. And you can also help people recognize their internal noise, what's going on with them, what kind of shifts are they having, and how can that lead to potential opportunity for growth together, instead of keeping it in and letting it just quietly really sneak below the surface. And so we talk a lot about this, but part of seeing and hearing and knowing yourself and others is being able to bring the subconscious thoughts into the conscious, because once we get them to that place where we can consciously process them, that enables them not to be hidden anymore. So thanks so much for listening in. Check out the show notes for a link to be able to subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.